Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on building with AppGen. So this is our final one of the AI Build Week. I am Ben Miller, and I lead the solution engineering team here in EMEA. And I'm joined today by my fantastic colleague, Alexi. But before I start this properly, I wanted to post some questions in the poll. So firstly, how many of you have used vibe coding tools like Lovable or Bolt? And then secondly, how many of you would trust the applications built there to put into production? And maybe I'll just give everyone a little bit of time to answer these. So in terms of what we'll be covering today, and please continue to answer the poll whilst I'm speaking, what we'll be doing is we'll start by covering what AppGen actually is. And then the majority of the time we'll actually spend building alongside Alexi. So hopefully all of you will have received an invitation to the Retool instance. If you haven't, Amavir has posted a link to the channel for how you can join, and he's also posted a link to the Google Doc. So please make sure that you click on the Google Doc, and please make sure that you can join the instance. If for whatever reason you aren't in the instance, if you just post your email in, we'll be able to add you in. And then we'll end briefly with some kind of Q&A. So what actually is AppGen and why do we need it? The core reason is, okay, so we can actually see the results. So actually, most of you still have never actually vibe coded an application before, but actually we're seeing about 30% have, which is interesting. I'll be interested to the answer to the next question as well. So, I think the core reason why we need AppGen is pretty well explained in this slide. So AI tools, whether those are kind of like code generation tools like Claude Code or Cursor, or app generation tools like Lovable or Bolt, so tools that let you go from basically writing plain English to building an application for you, has significantly sped up the process of building applications, as well as enabling new types of people to build. But what they haven't necessarily done is speed up the time to shipping applications into production. And this is the fundamental reason why we need AppGen. Retool is the first platform that actually lets you go from natural language prompt to fully deployed, secure production application. But how do we actually do this? It's essentially down to three things. So firstly, we sit on top of your data. At Retool, we spent years building secure connections to the most commonly used resources, whether that's internal APIs or popular ones like Stripe, or your data warehouses like Snowflake or Databricks. We let you build applications directly on top of these rather than simply using mock data. Secondly, we handle deployment for you. So once you've set up Retool, each application is automatically available for your end users. So either you can use our multi-tenant cloud, or you can deploy Retool inside of your VPC. And finally, and potentially most importantly, Retool is secure by default. You can set things up like SSO and role-based access control centrally and have it apply to all of your applications. Permissions from Snowflake and Databricks can be inherited inside the application. Likewise, audit logs are included out of the box on all applications. You can also build in dev environments and enforce rules for how it gets moved into production. Essentially, our ambition is to make creating software as easy as writing a document, all whilst enforcing guardrails and governance. This means you can go from idea to a working application today, rather than waiting weeks or potentially never having what you want. And with this, I'd like to hand over to Alexi, who can actually show you how to do all of this.
Hello everybody, I'm Alexi and I'm super happy today to run this build along. What we're going to do today is build a customer license application that's going to allow us to track and manage all of our customers. This is going to be built on top of Snowflake. And my goal today is to make you much more comfortable when it comes to building and vibe coding applications into production. There are three main things that we're going to focus on. The first one is around how can you create and edit application using prompts. The second part is all about understanding the ecosystem. How do you secure, govern, and connect to the different data sources that you want for your entire applications, which is really exactly what Ben just covered when it comes to how we differentiate from a lot of different vibe coding tools out there. And finally, we're also going to explore other ways that you can use our chat, which is called Assist, which allows you to build and create applications, using it to explain facts about Retool, to debug, or to just understand more fully what the context of an application is, which are things that are very useful when you're trying to maintain applications. Now, I do have a quick disclaimer for all of you. So if you can just go to the next slide. We're building with AI and we're vibe coding in general. Now, for those of you who are familiar with these kind of tools, we're all going to put the same input in the same chat. We're not all going to get the same output. So I am going to take a bit of time to make sure that we can explore the different options and you can get to something that's relatively close to mine. So bear with me in that case, and I'll make sure that quite a few of you can follow along when we're going like this. All this being said, I think it's time for us to go into the tool. I'll keep that one for later, Ben. And if you don't mind, I'll just share my screen. So if I'm not mistaken, quite a few of you should have by now. So this is the document, the Assist webinar instructions. If you don't have access to this document, I think Amavir is putting it in the chat right now. This will really cover most of what you need and everything that you want. To open the instance that we want, it's the first link that you can find right here, which is the EMEA agents. And as I said, if you have any login issues, please don't hesitate. Ask Amavir and he will be more than glad to add you to the instance. So I'll just open this up. And when we open the instance, you should arrive to something that's quite similar to this. You probably won't have all the recent drafts. This is my work, so this should be empty for you. But this is the basics of Retool. I'm not going to go into what everything happens here. We're directly going to the prompting part. I'm just going to give you 10 seconds to make sure that you can all log in and give you a bit of time for that. Perfect. So the way to create an application, you can click on this button that's right here. So the blue button and create app. When you do this, it's going to open a canvas. Some of you may have panels that are open, so arrive on a page that looks like this, or just a blank canvas. In any case, you can collapse all of them by using the little crosses that you have on the top right-hand side. So don't hesitate to use them to get onto a blank canvas. Now, I suppose most of you are aware, in 2025, we don't really start from blank canvases anymore. We want to start with either templates or either prompts, and this is exactly what we're going to do. To open up our prompt interface, you want to go on the bottom left of the application, and you can see right here, it's called Assist. It's still a product in beta, so by the end of this, I will ask you to add some feedback if possible. And you can open the different chat panel. Here you have 4 different prompts that are pre-built ones if you want to try this out on other use cases. But what we're going to do today is work on our customer license one. To find the prompt, you can go back to the instructions. And so you have all of the instructions on how to build the application. And here right now, it's the write a prompt in the chat interface. So this is the one that you want to select. and I'm going to put it into the chat. Do not press enter right now because there's a bit of a caveat, and I'll get into this just now. The prompt is, let's create a customer license application using Snowflake, display a table with customer details, include filters to find customers by customer name and number of licenses min and max, add actions to update and create customers. So as we can see, it's really a CRUD application allowing us to really see and edit all of our customers. There's one thing though, here as you can see, the @Snowflake is written in normal text, and that's not something that we want. So I'm going to ask you to remove that and to type @. This is the first thing that's quite different from a lot of other vibe coding tools that you're probably aware of, is you have access to all of the resources we've pre-configured. Now, this is super powerful because it means that we're capable of giving our chat awareness around what the resources are inside our ecosystem. And in this case, the one we're going to use is the Snowflake one that you can find right here. And I'm going to deep dive a bit more into what resources are so you really understand what we're doing when we're running this. Now, I'm actually going to run this script twice. This is just for me. Keep to the EMEA agents instance. I'll also run it in my own instance just in case. As you can imagine, we're quite a few, so there is a small chance that I switch between quite a few tabs. When it comes to resources in general, this is something that you can configure inside Retool. So the first part that I want to look at is how do you get there? If you click on the Retool logos that's on the top left-hand side, in the drop-down, you'll find resources. You can open this link and open this in a new tab. This will be better because otherwise the chat could be interrupted if you don't do this. And when you open the resources tab, it's one of the main core aspects of our platform. Retool allows you to connect to any and all data. So today we're connecting to Snowflake, but let's say that I wanted to connect to another data lake or another resource. I could create this quite simply by clicking on Create New in the top right, clicking on Resource, and here I have a list of all the integrations that we have. So if you're using things like an API or Google Sheets or Postgres, that's something that you can do. And in this case, we're talking about data lakes. We have quite a few of them, like Databricks or BigQuery or Snowflake in our case. So you can pre-configure this, and as you can see in this build along, you're all using one that I've already configured, which is Snowflake, which means that that's the first thing that we can do is reuse a pre-configured connection, and we don't have to recreate this every single time we're creating a new application. This means that the connection that our vibe coding tool is making is always the same one, and it adds a lot of consistency to what we're doing. Now, I'm going to show to you quite quickly what the resource is directly. This one, so it's this Snowflake instance that we're using. Do not worry, the password is encrypted, so you cannot access the Snowflake one. Essentially, what is interesting about this is, so for those of you who aren't aware, Snowflake is a data warehouse where you can store a lot of data in different tables and different schemas. What's interesting is that in our configuration, we have something called user roles inside Snowflake. And essentially how a role works is you can grant permissions to any given user, so in this case to this user role, so that he can only do certain actions inside the data warehouse and the database layer. In this case, we're using something called Retool write role. And as you can imagine, this means that our connection is allowed to read, but also write back data to our Snowflake instance. This is very interesting because let's say that I was configuring this tool so that anybody that was vibe coding inside Retool would only allowed to read data. I could configure a user role to do this. In Snowflake, call it read only, for example. And in that case, nobody would be able to write back data. It's a very good way of securing all of your connections and making sure that whatever you're building on top of these, you have control over what's happening. If I actually wanted to go even further, here we're using a user role, which is the same for all of us because it's in the configuration. We could actually go one step further in terms of authentication. Here it's basic authentication. We're all using the same one. But I could also use things like OAuth, which is a per user authentication. What this means is, let's imagine that I was in the marketing team and you were in the financial team. Well, I would only be allowed to see marketing data in my case, and you would only be allowed to see financial data, and this would be linked to your own Snowflake account. This is very powerful because it means that whatever you're building, you'd be building on top of your specific user interactions with the different resources. And our vibe coding tool inherits of this, which really gives you a lot of control and granularity and a lot of security around how you're building. I'll make a quick stop here, and I think we've covered resources. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the building part and see where we're at. Now, there's quite a few things that we can see. First of all, you can see that it's streaming in live, and actually you can see this live as I'm talking, that things are happening on our screen. So there's quite a lot of information that's going on, and I'm going to try and give you a better way to navigate this. The first thing is our assist tool works in two phases. The first part is around planning, so creating a plan about how it's going to answer to the prompt that we've done. And the second part is around implementing it. So as we can see, the plan right now that it's created, and you probably have something that's quite similar, is it's going to explore the Snowflake database schema. Then it's going to design the application layout and define the data flow and dependencies. So essentially what it's doing is that it's first looking at the data we have, then scaffolding the application to make a layout that makes sense linked to this, and then adding all of the logic and business queries that we would want to make these applications work. So in this case, what I can see is that exploring the Snowflake schema, it's found a table with customers. It's found fields, things like name, licenses, active licenses, platform, revenue, industry. So this is, well, I mean, it's pretty good in the sense that we're building a licensing app. So at least it knows that it's going to be able to go into that direction. And then I can see by toggling down all on the different steps, a bit more information around what it's going to build. Now, I find this actually very interesting because it's giving me a summary of what it wants to build in scaffold. And if I'm trying to debug an application or understand what's going on, it's giving me a lot of information around that. So what I can see, for example, on the main page is that the first thing that it wants to show me is text called app title customer license management. And if I go into my canvas, I can see that for now I have something called app title, and it probably at some point will change to customer license management. At least this is exactly what I'm expecting from what I'm reading. So this is the first way that you can sort of navigate and understand what's going on, is the interface will give you a lot of insight around what's going on and what's happening. It's the same thing when it comes to the technical specifications. I won't get into the details, but if you want to take 10, 20 seconds to sort of read this through to understand what's going on, I think it's good for you to sort of see this in action. There are a few things here, for example, that I can see. I'm seeing actions like create customer modal. So I'm expecting at some point to have a modal in the workflows that I'm looking at. And these are the kind of things where I'm looking into. Now, the second part that it's doing is the implementation plan. Everything about setting the app theme, the containers, the modals, the UI, and then getting into configuration when it comes to the different components. So I'm going to scroll a bit down. There are a few things that are interesting that we'll get in. I can see that there's a mention of an app theme, so I'll show you theming a bit later. It's added quite a few UI components, and right now it's configuring component properties and labels. So essentially what it's doing is going over what we saw in the first part in the themes and colors and making sure that everything is named in the right way. What I am going to do is just check to see if this one is a bit further down the line. No, it isn't. Do not worry if it takes a bit of time. I know that we're quite a few building at the same time, which means that which generally doesn't happen this way where we're 30 people building on top of the same instance. So it may take a bit of time, but bear with me, we'll be more than fine. By the way, what I can see right now is that the app title has just been changed, and now it's written customer license management. What I'm going to do right now is show you a bit more of the configuration, because we've talked about resources in general and how we can connect to those part of the application and secure them. But there's also something to see around, well, permissions in general. Let's say that I want to build an application where there are certain parts where I want some users to have access to and others not. Well, that's not directly linked to my database layer. It's more linked to, well, permissions in general in groups. This is also something we can configure, and I think it's a good time for us to look at it right now. If you wanted to do this, what you would do is, so you can click on the Retool logo on the top left, and you want to go to the settings. Now, I believe right now, when it comes to the settings that we have for EMEA agents, quite a lot of you are not administrators of the instance, of course, because as you can imagine, I didn't want all of you to be deleting all of the data and all of the setups that we had. So for this, I think you have to watch this on my screen. But if you want to afterwards look into this on your own, if you set up an instance, you'll be automatically admin and have access to most of this. So when it comes to groups and permissions, we can set up groups that have access to different parts of our application. And our vibe coding tool will inherit of a lot of the security features that we're putting on. So one example that I could give you is, let's say that we wanted to create this no Snowflake group. If I click on this, what I can see is all of the applications that are being built, and I can decide if my users are going to have, well, the granularity that I want to give them access to, if they're allowed to only use the applications, edit them, or if they own them entirely, which means that they're also capable of deleting them. The same goes for resources. In our case, what I could do is, if we had two people from the marketing team, but one of them was like a higher end manager and the other one was somebody that was quite down low in the organization, potentially I wouldn't want them to have access to the same marketing info, but I would both want them to still be able to read and write back from a database. Well, in that case, what I could do is I could set up on Snowflake different types of granularity as to what they're able to see. So some of them would be able to use and see Snowflake, whereas others wouldn't even be allowed to see the Snowflake data. So this is exactly how you would do this. And if you want to know more about this, feel free to ask me questions at the end. There's going to be a Q&A session. I can go a bit deeper into this. But essentially, you can create any group you want, set permissions on application, resources, and anything inside the Retool environment, which is going to allow us to go a bit further. This being said, I'm going to go back to what it's building. What I can see right now is that it's actually started building quite a few things, and I hope for you too. I'm at a stage where it's asking me to validate and run queries upon my data. This is super important because essentially what I don't want is to run, well, this vibe coding tool to run rampant and run any kind of query against my database. And so right now what I have is a preview of this. And what I can see reading it is that essentially this is a query that gets data inside my database that comes from my Snowflake instance, and it's applying a few of the filters. I can even see that a few of the filters are named, so I'm going to be able to refine them in my application afterwards. You have to run these queries. You can run them. So I'm going to ask it to always run the queries. So it's always going to be prompted to me. If you want to not have to, if you want it to auto accept, you can do this and auto approve all of the queries. With the prompt that I've done, I'm expecting it to be 2 to 3 queries, one to get the data, one to create a new customer, and one to update a customer. So what we can see, by the way, is that every single time that it's running something, it's going to change slightly the UI, tell you if it's worked or not, and carry on to the next step of the execution. I'll do the same thing on the other end. As you can see, both of them are kind of in sync. It's also going to be interesting to see the differences between both of them later on the line. And as I said, so please do not forget to run them. You can also decide to auto approve them if you think that that's the way to go for you. While this is running, I want to bring your attention to another part that's very interesting when it comes to vibe coding. Is one thing that's very complicated is to have a good quality and output quality and have vibe coding tools follow best practices when it comes to building applications. The first thing that we can see is that everything that I have in my canvas, so if you look at the canvas on the right-hand side, is named correctly. I have things like filter container, like app title, like customers table. This is very good. So it's a very good best practice, but what it's trying to do is follow the best practices all of the time. Another thing that's very interesting when it comes to best practices is generally this is something that you have when you, for example, want to rebuild the same thing twice. It's not using the exact same table. So if you have a very big application with multiple table components, it's not always using the same one. Because Retool historically it comes from the visual interface world where we have a design system and a lot of different components. Everything that it's building is also following the best practices of our own library that we've created. If you want to see this library, you can click on the top left on this button, which is called Add UI. And here you have all of the different components that exist inside the Retool library. By the way, you can extend this by using code if you really want very custom-made components. And everything that's creating right now, so this customer table, for example, is an exact representation of the table that you see here. So it is a table with all of the configuration panel on the right. And I'll get back to this slightly after. Right now, in terms of best practices, so what we can see is that it's a step 10, it's binding the query to the data. So essentially what it's doing is making sure that our customer table will show the right things. What I'm going to do right now, since it's taking a bit of time, is also look into the low-code aspect interface of the editor. As you can see, everything that we're building is being shown on the canvas, but I also have access to all of these elements across the board. So I can click on them, I can look in the inspector what's going on, and this is very interesting to me because it means that I have different levels of appreciation of how I can see that things going on. Right now, for example, in this case, I can see that it tells me that it's got no rows found. And this is what I'm a bit interested by because I'm wondering why I don't see any customers. Now, it tells me that the data source, the get customers, is empty if I look at it when I open the configuration panel. So if you have the same thing as me and you want to see this, you can click on the customers table, open the inspector, and potentially you'll have this which says the selected data source is empty. What I'm going to do then is look at that data source. So on the left-hand side, if I go down to the fourth one, which is the code editor, I'm going to see that I have a get customers query right here, which is pre-populated with data. By the way, this is exactly the same script that you saw in the chat interface. We've made sure that we always has consistency when it comes to this. So I'm going to run this again to make sure that there's no results returned. And first of all, this is sort of reassuring to me because it means that it isn't a problem between the connection that I have from my query to my data source. Now, when I look at this, the first thing that I'm thinking is that it's probably the filters that aren't working as expected. So I'm just going to remove the filters for now to make sure that nobody's deleted the entire database. So let me just test it out and see if we can see things. Okay, so my intuition was right on this case. As we can see on the right-hand side, I have access to the customers table. And in this case, I can see that I've got data. Now, I've more than certainly broken the filters, so I'm not expecting this to work because I've removed them from the query, but at least we know what the source is, and it's going to be a great use case for when we start editing applications. Next thing I'm going to do is just see if the initial build is finished, as you can see. Right now, the last step generally is an explanation of what's been done. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read this out, and I'm also going to give you 20 to 20 seconds-ish to make sure that you also have time to finish your applications for those of them who are building with me. So what is it saying? It's saying that I built a customer license management app using Snowflake. It includes a main table of customer details, name, and min-max license filters, create and update customer flows, event handling to refresh data, and close modals on success. And so essentially it's telling me that I've got an interface where I can filter, create, and edit. So let's test this out, even though I do know that the filter is not going to work. Now, if you want to look at the application when it comes to what it looks like, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to click on this button. You can view the application in edit mode. I just feel as though it's a bit nicer to use as though you were an end user. Now, for one, I can see that it's got the 50 results that I have. It's got a few tags for iOS that I find kind of nice. I would have liked to have them for the industry too. I've got to create customer modal. So this is pretty good. I would have probably wanted it to add a title here quite quickly. This looks pretty good. There's one thing that I find a bit weird when I look at this is I don't see an ID field, so I'm not going to try this right now, but I am going to try and look at what the edit part looks like. So let's say that I want to edit this one, and I'm just going to call this, just add enterprise, for example, to this name and change the licenses. If I update the customer, is this working? Perfect. So the edit modal works. As you can see in my table, I've got something that's already working when it comes to editing it. Aerospace parts, enterprise has been added, and I can take it away and go back to it. So let me just update the customer. By the way, we're all using the same data source. So it isn't impossible that a few of you, if you're adding things, creating things, deleting things, that my interface will also show. As I can see, I've got 51 results. So one of you has probably added something somewhere. So if you see things that are evolving that you haven't done, it's completely normal. It's because, well, we're all on the same instance and we're all using the same resource. So that's actually extremely good that I see one result more. So thanks to that builder who's doing that. And if I refresh this, you can see 50, and I should get to 51 because somebody's added a new instance to this. So what I want to do right now is take a bit of a step back. What have we done? We've done a one-shot prompt, which essentially means that in a one-shot prompt, we've got it to understand our connections, to reuse the security that's linked to it. We've got it to create custom fields or filter fields that don't necessarily work, but we're going to get there, create the different modals, and view everything that we want to view. So now I'm going to go into, well, how do I edit this? And what's the best way of editing this? Now, the first thing that I want to say is that we can actually repeat the same process when it comes to editing applications. So here, what I want to do is actually say, well, maybe the first thing that I want to do is make the filters work. And so that's what I'm going to try right now. And this would be how I would do it if I was building this application. I would first try using it through the interface. And when I use the first add, I mentioned resources, but there's another things that you can tag. You can actually tag anything inside Retool. So my query name, I'm going to refine the query name. So to do this, I'm going to go on the fourth tab and open this up. It's called get customers query. And I'm going to tag that resource, well, that query specifically. So it's called create customer query. And I'm going to say, can you please change this so the filters apply? And while I'm going to run this, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to show you other ways that I can modify things inside the Retool platform. I'm actually also going to just run this one in case, so that we have another example where I can run other threads on. This is something that we do quite a lot when you want to have threads in parallel, just to show you a lot of the capabilities that we have. So I'm going to auto approve this, save this so that this goes through. Now let me just get back to where I am. So we're going to get back to this. Right now, what I can say is that we've seen that you can modify and edit things through the chat interface. You can also do this using the low-code tools that we have. So for example, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to have the create customer button be right here because it's in a filter container, and I don't think it should be there. I think it should be at the bottom. When I'm doing these kind of things, generally, vibe coding tools only allow you to do things through the chat interface. And so if you want to move a button like 20 pixels to the right or to the left, it's very annoying because you can't just do it in drag and dropping. But this is something that we can do. So to do this, you can simply take the button itself, drag and drop it, and I'm going to put it downwards. Now, is this the best UI ever? I don't know, but I want to separate things a bit more. Also, as I mentioned, I thought it would be a bit better if in the industry part, we saw tags instead of just classic text as we see here. So what I'm going to do too is I'm going to click on the customers table and go to the inspector phase. And right now, what I see here is all of the configuration panel when it comes to a table. And this is very powerful because it's allowing me to do what we call multimodal chat, but also visual interface modifying. So let's say that for some reason I wanted to show the ID. If you click on the three buttons on the right, you can show this column. You can then re-hide it if you want to. But what I want to do is change the type of the industry column. So I'm going to click on industry, and here we see the format is a string, and I'm going to change this to a tag. Perfect, it works. So this is sort of how I think when I'm going through things. For very minor changes where I can see it quite quickly, you want to use directly the visual interface. For more complex problems or things where it comes to logic, you can ask assist. And what I'm going to do is see what it's told me. So it's telling me, oh, I tagged the wrong resource. Well, there you go. So that's why this is great. What is it telling me? It's telling me that it wants to update the create customer query, but it's an insert query. So what I'm trying to do doesn't make sense, and he's completely right. Right now, what's happening is that why would I add a filter to creating a new resource? This doesn't make sense. So the one that I should have tagged is the get customer query. For practical reasons, I'm just gonna import this from an application that I've already built that resembles a lot to this. And I'm just gonna import that in the code. This is actually the last way of modifying things. So my bad for tagging the wrong resource. It's actually using code directly. We know that for certain use cases, we have customers that really need to get very specific when it comes to business logic or things that are going on. And we allow you to do this in the platform. So I've copy pasted this. There's just one thing that I need to check is that the naming of the components are the same from that application to this one. So the filter customer name seems to be the same for licenses and same for max licenses. This is actually a pretty good tell that, well, as I was talking about best practices, it's actually using the same naming conventions from application to application. So this is super powerful when it comes to me, if I want to maintain multiple applications at the same time. It's building in a way that's super consistent, reusing my elements, reusing my names. So I'll just save and run this, hoping that it works. And we can actually try the filters themselves. Since I've added this, and this might be a problem, I'm just going to add this in case you need it into the assist webinar feature. I'll just add this at the bottom. If you have the same output as me, this will be useful to you. The only thing that you need to be wary of is the name of my components the same one as on the page? And as I told you, the filter customer name, you can see it if you hover the different elements on the page. Now I'm going to try the filter out. So I'm going to re-go into navigation mode because I think it's the better one, and type arrow. And boom, here we have it. It's working. So I think this is really good because it really shows how you can quickly get things set up. And if you need to go into more granularity, you can. So you don't end up in that infinite loop of always prompting without really knowing where you're going. I'm also going to make sure that the minimum to maximum licenses is also working. So let's set this to 4 and this to 20. And I think that's you need to click out of the 20 for it to actually register. So here, as I can see, all of the licenses seem to be between 4 and 20. So I'm super happy about this. Going forwards, there are a few things that I would also want to do and that I wanted to show you. Now, the first one is, I think that if I was a manager that was doing customer license management, I'd love to have a bit of a dashboard aspect to this to sort of see the number of customers I have, the number of licenses, what's going on. So that's one thing that I'm going to prompt it to go a bit further and to really see how this works. So I'm going to ask it, can you add, actually, I think I've put this in the instructions, so I'll use the exact same one as you. Can you add metric to this around customers with a dashboard-like experience? So I'm going to ask it to do that in this instance on one end. So this is one thing that I would want to do. So to add a bit more interaction, a bit more to this application. And so I'm hoping that in this case, it's going to get queries still based on top of my Snowflake instance. And on the other end, for example, I would love to change the theme of this application. I don't know for you, I'm a huge fan of dark mode. So I'm actually going to want to change the UI. Now, since this thread is running, I'm going to be running this in a parallel thread. So in one, for example, in this one, if it's completed, just to show you how this can interact and how we can interact with theming. On this, so what I'm going to do is change the theme. And I'm going to use, for example, Netflix theme to the Netflix theme. Change the theme to the Netflix one, if possible. Sometimes it's good to be a bit nice to your chat interface. So what am I doing here? Essentially, I'm asking it to change a lot of the UI, a lot of the components when it comes to theme. But as you can see, I mentioned Netflix that I misspelled, but luckily it's more intelligent than me. And very nice. So I think this is probably the red and the black from Netflix that we all know and love. And this is very interesting because what we've just realized is that our chat interface is also aware of things on the outside. And so it found the Netflix theme. At no moment did I have to tell it, oh, do you know what Netflix is? What's going on? And this is actually very powerful because it can integrate much more than just the platform itself and answer questions that are very specific to different things on the platform. By the way, it set the app theme directly. And that's another thing that we have in terms of governance. And in the same vein, making sure that you build applications that are consistent across everything that you're building. It's setting something called the app theme. And if you want to look at what the app theme is, you can click on the app settings, which is the last one on the left-hand side panel. You can then go to the app theme right here. And if you click on edit, you will see that all of the colors that it's inputted right now come from our agent. And so agent, which is a chat interface, it's an agent behind the scene if you want to know more a bit about how this works under the hood. So this is very, very interesting because it means that also Assist can help us create our application more globally and really configure this at a global level. So we've done this with the theme, and that's great. And it can also answer more questions. Initially, in the first thing that we told you, we also think that it's very important for our customers to have vibe coding tools that are useful in their cloud on their data. And so that's actually one thing that I could ask this interface. Do you know how I can host a Retool application? This is a great question to ask in the sense that if you're trying to find information about Retool, it's also an assistant that can help you at any point while doing this. And so we find this extremely powerful when it comes to having also a sort of Retool docs when it comes to this. And if I look at the response that it's going to give me, it's telling me the simplest option is using Retool Cloud, which is what we're all on today. But you can also do self-hosted deployments, and it's linking me links where if I open them, it's going directly to our documentation. So you also have an assistant that's aware of the ecosystem that it's in and that can find information from the internet and other places and other sources. So don't hesitate to test this out. Very useful when you're building. In the same vein, one thing that we've realized many people, well, it's a bit of a hurdle that we all have at some point, is what happens when I arrive on the application, I don't know what's going on, I don't have any documentation, and I want to know what's happening. Well, since Assist is aware of the structure of all of our application, it's capable of telling you what's going on. So what I'm going to do is ask it, can you explain this application to me? And I'm expecting it to be able to tell me exactly what's happening and what's going on. And what we see is when you have people that are coming and leaving, that are vibe coding, it's a great thing to have a way to document your applications by default and to be able to have them be, well, understood and explained to you. So don't hesitate to run these prompts as you're going with me, and you'll see what's going on and how it can help us do that. So what it's telling me right now, and I'll just, because I probably have a query to validate on the other end. Oh, actually, I don't. Perfect. So while this answer is filtering, we're going to quickly look into what it does. It's telling me you've got a customer license data with full CRUD, create, read, update, delete. It's giving me the different fields, the different features, everything that I need to understand what's going on with the different queries. So there you go in terms of explaining applications, super powerful. And I'll just wrap this up in terms of build along by going back to our initial build and seeing the dashboard metrics that we wanted to put into place. What I can see right now is that it's been able of creating this. Now it's put this below the UI just above. We can see that we have the total number of customers, the amount of licenses, active licenses, and this seems to be connected in real time to our table. As I can see, I've got 54 results here, 54 customers here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to edit and change the number of licenses by one more, and I'm expecting the total licenses and active licenses to be updated with this. So just running that. And perfect, it's been updated by one. So this is exactly the strategy that we want more and more people to do, is use our vibe coding tool on top of your data to secure them using the at resources that you've already configured, the permissions. We mentioned also other things that I haven't gone over, things like SSO, things like role-based access control, things like having just-in-time integration when it comes to adding new people to the platform. And all of this is culminates in a product and that you're going to be able to vibe code and secure at the same time. So what I'm going to do is quickly go back to what we've seen today. So what to keep an eye out for building from now on. There are three main things that I want you to keep an eye out when you're building more. The first one is you can mention resources, and you can actually go further than that as we saw, because you can also mention queries, elements on the canvas, whatever you want. Also be aware that Assist has full context over what's going on. So it has knowledge around components, queries. It can also do things like explain what Snowflake is to you, or explain what was in the Snowflake instance. That's something that we could have prompted to understand what was in that database and what was going on. So it's really a way for you to understand everything that's going on when you're building and make this much simpler and accessible to a lot more builders. And you can add guardrails on every single one of your queries and more like themes. The idea here is that it will, well, first of all, there's the human in the loop part where you accept all of the queries. That's what we saw when we were building. We had to run the queries manually. And there's also all the configuration that we do around this, as I just mentioned, to make sure that you're building enterprise-grade applications. So this is the end of the build along part. What I'm going to do right now is go into the Q&A phase. I don't know if there's anything I need to address just before Amavir. If I have no answer in 10 seconds, I'll just move to Q&A. Perfect. So I suppose this means that we're going into this. So I'll just have a quick scan through the questions and I'll try and answer as many as I can in the remaining time. So, will we have access after this webinar to try this build later with the recording? Yes, you will. We'll be posting this on our YouTube channel, so you can find it there. And I think there may be an email that we send to everybody that applied with the YouTube link. So in any case, you can find it if you type Retool on YouTube, and it may go directly into your mails. The second question is, can you define your own best practices to apply to the agent? That's a great question. So you can do this right now. I think I don't know where this comes from. If you're using other tools like Cursor, for example, you can actually write markdown files directly where you define the best practices that the agent will apply. This is something that we're building in right now into the agent itself. It's something that we're looking at quite deeply. The best practices today that it's using by default are the ones around using, well, our pre-existing resources, the naming conventions, and a lot of things that we've put into place into our system prompt. What you can do in any case is you can, in the prompt for every single application at the beginning, tell it the best practices that we want to reuse. But that is something that we would like to govern at a more global level, and that's coming. As I said, it's still a beta, it's still a product in beta, so we're really working on this to try and make it as good as possible. Before answering another question, actually, I've just realized I've forgotten one thing. In the building process, you have feedback that you could put right here. If you can, I would be more than happy for you to share the feedback with the team. It's something that's super valuable for us and will allow us to, well, understand more what you're doing, what you're working, how you're working, and how you would like to see this evolve. So if you want to share feedback with us, please do it through this. It's the best way to get into touch with our product and engineering team, and we'd love to have more of your feedback on the assist directly. Going back to the Q&A, so I'll just switch this to the answer part. Will we have access after this webinar to try, sorry, I've already answered that one, so I won't answer that one. Can I apply agent to the workflow, and if I can also make my Retool app public? If yes, what of security? Okay, so making sure that I've interpreted the question right, I think you're doing a reference to our Retool Workflows product. So this is our backend automation tool. For those of you who aren't familiar with this, I'll very quickly show what our workflows product looks like. So I'll just create a new workflows. If you want to find this, you click on the logo, you can go to all the workflows tab, create new workflow. And essentially, it's our backend automation tool where you can add different scripts, components, and link to resources to everything that you're doing. Right now, the agent doesn't work on workflows. It's something that the engineering is working on right now. We want to make sure that everything that you're building, be it the front-end application, the workflows, or even the agentic part that I haven't mentioned today, will be able to be built using Assist. And Assist will know, as we said before, everything that we've configured to for whichever product that we have. So for the time being, it's not something that we can do, but it's coming extremely soon in our roadmap. The second question was, can I make my app Retool public? So yes, you can make it public. And there are sort of different ways of doing this. You can either embed the application into another one or just make it directly public. What happens in terms of security? This will depend on the configuration that you've set up inside the tool. If you make it go through a certain authentication flow, then you will have the same groups and permissions as you saw in that part, in that aspect. So if you go towards that tab and you define that, if the app is public or not public, it doesn't change anything when it comes to what is applied in terms of security. So you can define that exactly the same way. Is the AI agent capable of searching the web? So right now, the AI agent is capable of searching the web, but it is something that we are limiting in a sense, as we don't want this to be used as if it was like a chat GPT or to do many more things to building Retool. So it will mainly find information that's useful if it thinks that it's relevant to building, editing applications inside Retool. This is also a way to protect ourselves from whatever could happen if it was starting to search on the web. So there are some capabilities, but we've limited them to make sure that it's still relevant to what we're doing today. Now, when it comes to our production SQL database, how can I have Retool know what the tables and references between them are? Currently, I have taught ChatGPT this manually, explaining the database. Can Retool scan and learn my setup? That's a great question, and the answer is yes. And I think that's the main thing. That's the main thing today, and the main reason why people are coming to Retool to vibe code is that it will be able to understand what join queries are. As a part of this AI build week, we had one yesterday with Keenan on the US side who looked into that specifically. It might be good for us to. I don't know if Daniel, you have the link to that, but I'm pretty sure in that one he goes into a production SQL database, into how join works. It is true that here there was just one table, but it understands this because when you scan the database, you can also know what the joins are, what the different foreign keys are that you've set up. And so it is context aware of how your database is set up. And what will happen is, as you saw when I was building the first part, was it scanning the schema. In this case, there was only one table that I had given access to because we didn't want to give it access to our entire Snowflake. But in your case, it will scan the entire SQL database, and that will work. That will work. Can I use production data when vibe coding with Retool? I mean, I think in terms of general practice, I would never advise you to directly use production data while you're vibe coding if you're modifying things. And I think the beauty around Retool is that you can actually reproduce your SDLC pipeline. And so what I would do is, as if you were doing more traditional engineering, if you have a production database and a replica of this, which is staging, for example, I would set up that in staging so that when you're building applications, you're not, for example, removing the entire production database by error. These are more linked to how we work as engineering in general, more than being a specific problem to vibe coding. The goal, of course, is in production, you can have it talk to your production database, and that's exactly what we're aiming for. When it comes to building and vibe coding, I would advise you, if you're trying to do enterprise, to have a staging environment that is very close to your production environment, but with fake data on this, so that you can do as you would in traditional engineering, which is create all the features, test it out with a lot of different data, and this will actually allow you to go faster with less fear when you're building of interacting directly with your production data, because otherwise you are doing that. So when I was editing, for example, a customer, it would have edited a customer in your true production database. The next one are, how are credits allocated? If I ask a simple request versus a more complex one, are the credits assigned differently in the situations? That's a great question. To be completely fair, actually, I'm going to have to skip that one because I'm not sure of how credit works in allocation. I do know that for now, you can use this for free until December. It will be a usage-based allocation, so there will be something around the number of tokens. So of course, more simple requests will have less allocation. If I had to give you exact numbers, it's not something that I could give you right now, but it's a very good question. If you ask this to me afterwards, I can look it up with the product team who's in head of pricing. Is the assistant accessible via API? So that is one of the things that we want to build out. I think that's still a great question. Right now, it's not the case. We actually had a hackathon internally last week. It's one of the things that was looked at because we think it has a lot of value, and we're definitely looking to do this. So I've seen the premises of this last week. We had a few engineers try this out. I would expect this to come at some point on the roadmap, but today it isn't accessible. So just checking time, I still have a bit of time. So the next question is, do you have plans to implement a feature that I can attach a document or Figma design? Great question. So yes, I haven't talked about the roadmap, but there are quite a few things that are coming up. The first thing that you saw is that right now we did everything in a single page, and what we're looking to do is extend that to multiple page applications. You can already do this in traditional Retool. It's just that the feature generation doesn't work when you have multiple pages today, and that's coming very soon. When it comes to inputs, we're looking at attaching things like documents and also voice notes if you want to add them. So adding quite a few in videos too. So this is something that's coming up very shortly, and you can expect that. When it comes to Figma design, it's one of the top priorities that we have today. We're seeing more and more clients come to us saying, well, we just want to reproduce this Figma directly. So it's something that we're working on super actively. Thank you for that question. That was a great one. The next one is, can Retool Assist scan reference other apps I use within Retool? That's a great question. I haven't tested this, so this might be something that I could test out live, and I'll just see if it's capable of, I don't know. Are you context aware of other applications on this instance? My gut feeling tells me that it's not the case, but I actually don't know. So that's a great question. While this is turning, I'll answer in the next one and come back to this. The Q&A doc is here. Can it read my OpenAPI doc and learn how to reference it when needed? Great question. 100% it can. So if I go back to the resources tab, so for those of you who want to see how you do that, you go to the logo on the top left into resources. One of the resources that we have is the OpenAPI spec. We've actually run a webinar this week on top of this using Stripe, if I remember well. So that's maybe one that we could also tag. It works extremely well when you're using, so create a new one, a new resource. It works actually super well when using an OpenAPI. As you can imagine, because of the specification of the OpenAPI, it's very, very good at knowing what's happening and what to use. So if I remember correctly, we were using Stripe, and it's something that you can actually see in action where it's going directly into the OpenAPI configuration of the Stripe, and it's capable of building an entire application linked to monetization, and a finance app built on top of Stripe. Definitely something that you can do. And what I would say is that today it's optimized for using OpenAPI and any SQL kind application using CRUD. So let me just go back to the Q&A. And the last one that I want to know, so is the question that I haven't answered yet around scanning of references. So let's look at this. Can Retool Assist scan references? Which one is it? No. So as you can see right now, so my gut feeling was right. It isn't context aware, so it's only context aware of the current application and not the other parts of your organization. What's good actually is that it's giving me more info on Retool is, which also shows how good actually Assist is at knowing the Retool ecosystem and how it works. It's really a great hand-in-hand editor to be with. Works super well on that end. So the answer to that one would be no. Now, I think we're all done for questions. Amavi, if there are any that I've missed that you see, please don't hesitate to tell me. Other than that, I think we're good to go. So I don't think there are any more questions. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming to this session. We're super happy. This is actually the last webinar that we're doing part of our AI Build Week. I hope you really appreciated it. I've referenced a few talks before, the ones with the Stripe API and the one before using join tables on SQL. Please don't hesitate to look at this. If there's another session that we're going to run in 1 month that's going to be done by Amavi himself, which is going to be around governance, security across your applications, workflow, and agents, please don't hesitate to come to this. We're also going to run a poll on this webinar itself, hoping that you really liked the session and that it got you more comfortable building with Retool and vibe coding inside Retool. So I'm very happy to have done this, and thank you, everyone. And Daniel, I'm going to send it back to you because I think you're the one who takes over right now.